Hello, this is Petra Missy coming from the big picture. Thank you for listening. So, this week, uh, what came to me was we've been talking about, I don't know if you listened to the prior podcast, but we've been talking about limiting beliefs and how they're formed out of being hooked. Something hooks us. And, we as human beings, if you watch animals, and if something happens to an animal, like the hook is like when, as a young child, let's say you witness the adults doing something that you're not comfortable with, and you don't have your voice because you're little, right? Um, you freeze. You freeze in that moment, and it's kind of like trauma. Like, let's say you hear your parents talking about arguing, and you hear the word divorce come up or something. So right there, that hooked you, and you just froze, and the energy stayed in you. So now you have this belief. You're stuffing all that energy down, and now you're worried. You're worried that in the future your parents are going to divorce, so you don't feel safe. Now you walk through your life feeling like you're not safe, and you can't trust people. So now you have this whole image and belief in yourself that that you're not trustworthy, that you're not trusting, and it gives you the feeling that almost like you're needy, right? Because it leaves you feeling like you can't take care of yourself, that you're dependent on other people. So that's how these limiting beliefs come about. And what happens is, as we grow, and you do this intuitive energy healing, like when I work with people, they get to that point, and it's like an aha moment, and they peel the layer of the onion, and we get to the core, and they release it. And then there's more of them in, more of their soul, their spirit. And there's a space now. It's an actual space that you step into. And there's room for growth. So it can be a very strange feeling because you're used to having that vibration within you. And now there's this feeling of almost being like limbo, like a limbo energy. And you're waiting. You don't know what is coming. And you start to say, who am I? And you don't want to live in the past because you know that didn't feel good. And there's an excitement. You want to move on. And sometimes what happens is we forget that patience is required. And there's a purpose for this limbo energy. So as human beings, we want to label it. I'm bored now. Um, I'm lazy because I'm not asserting myself and trying to figure out what it is and blah blah blah. But sometimes spirit just has you in this place, this space of limbo, and they're preparing you. They're preparing you for what's next. And it's about listening and staying grounded and being okay in that space. And it's like a surrender. And you form another whole relationship with yourself in that. It really is your centered self. So there's a purpose for it. And if we can remember that, so that when we are scrambled, and we will be scrambled, things scramble us, like something comes up. It can be something simple, like the vacuum cleaner didn't work for me today or whatever. If you watch a dog, when a dog, let's say, runs into the wall, they shake. They shake it off, right? They just shake their body and they shake it off. But human beings, for some reason, we don't do that. We don't shake things off.
We get stuck.
We do because we internalize it, and we think we should be able to handle it. That was silly. Why is this bothering me? And we get into all those questions. And that's where we get into the story. And then we manifest this whole big thing that takes a lot of energy and time out of our lives. Rather than the dog shakes it off and then it's just like, okay, where am I going next? So that's what I was led to talk about today.
And sometimes we get stuck, I think, because we go back to, if we haven't worked through the core of something that we went through when we were younger, we go back to it. We can't shake it off. We get stuck because we freeze again. So working through that core, working through it can be tough, but once we get to that space, it's like free.
That's where being around other mirrors, because that's what we are for each other. Why I say we're not meant to do this alone. Because, for instance, in the classes, the group sessions that we do, a person is sharing, and we hold the space, and you basically are concentrating on that person, and you're feeling what they're feeling, but you can feel God's love coming through you because we're channeling. Every single one of us is channeling. And there's no desire to want to do crosstalk or advice giving. You listen, and you're just loving the person. And then the person can travel back and they can rework it. They can go back and they can really say, come with me, like come back to me because I left you behind, and bring themselves forward so that they can be whole. Because we leave ourselves many times because we get traumatized. This reality, there's a lot of things that can be traumatizing.
And it's interesting in classes too, because like you said, we're mirrors for each other. It's something that somebody might be going through, and the way that they're releasing it or the way that they're talking about it, we can relate to something in our life.
Absolutely.
And then it's like, when words are said, it's like, wow, that was for me too. Because we are mirrors for each other. So, just because somebody in the class is going through something, or, talking about what happened, we can relate it to something in our life.
Yeah. And when you're working on things, God really does have a sense of humor and wants you also to know that you're on track. And you'll get validations. Just like I said, my Aunt Kay speaks to me through double digits with the numbers. It may be as simple as, let's say you have a sibling and it's a strained relationship. And now you've decided that rather than continue the pattern, which is maybe the two of you argue a lot, maybe, we all have our role that we play in a family. So maybe you always give in to this one. One sibling gives in, the other one, is more aggressive. And you decide that you can't change the other person if you're more spiritually conscious. So you step away from the pattern and you allow yourself to be in that limbo space. And that's very hard sometimes because, we're wired to, oh, you have to love your siblings. And so you're doing that hard work of stepping back and waiting and looking within yourself to see why you do these things, to see where you got hooked, and you're working on that. And at the same time, that sibling may call you out of the blue, never calls you. And you're like, whoa. Because what happens is we feel each other, even if this other person doesn't have a darn clue that you're doing energy work, wouldn't believe in it or anything. They sense and they feel it. And you're doing the work and they're picking up on that. And all of a sudden you pop into their mind and now they're like, oh, I haven't heard from her. And then they call. So sometimes we keep people stuck too. We keep the situation stuck. So sometimes we just put way too much energy into things and we don't give other people the opportunity to give to us.
Mm-hmm. Because when we release it, they can actually be releasing it on their end and not even know about it.
Oh, yeah.
And that's how situations like that occur.
And then what's cool is, like I say, past generations heal and future generations heal. And this is where patterns change because things are passed down in families. Mm-hmm. Things are passed down, just like with genetics, with addiction and stuff. But addiction forms out of not wanting to feel. You don't want to feel something. And as I've said before, the people that deal with addiction, myself, I mind spending in sugar. Uh, they're normally very sensitive souls, and they feel. Mm-hmm. And to be a healer, to do this intuitive energy healing, the first thing is feeling. So they turn to that substance to just make it more manageable because they are alone. They're alone. So they might be the more spiritually conscious person in their family, but because they're around a lot of people with addictive personalities, they have nowhere to go with it. And that's why with having these group sessions, like you said, somebody will talk about maybe working on that, mm-hmm. and you don't even know the other person is dealing with that.
Right.
So it's very it's very healing. So a person that has struggling with addiction, they got hooked a long time ago. Usually the family looks at them and sees them as being dysfunctional, but they're really very, very sensitive. And when you're sensitive and you're observing all the time and you're picking up on energy of other people, it appears to other people that you are not confident. But really what it is you're not engaging with other people in this reality of all the small talk and everything, because you are listening in a different way with your intuition, with your third eye, and you're working. God has you there working, but yet it comes across as you feel as though you're not as good as them, like you don't belong, and they start targeting you without even meaning to. And it creates this pattern, and you feel lonely because you are different. Mm-hmm. You feel different. I mean, anybody that does this work and comes to me says they feel different. And they might love their families, they love their families. So now you get hooked and think, I'm not as good as my family. What's wrong with me? It's interesting. Life is like a puzzle. It's like if you could just take a beautiful oriental rug and pull the thread and weave it backwards. Mm-hmm. We learn all the time just by being curious. Like my granddaughter says, 4 years old, life is to her baby dolls. Life is about curiosity, big and small. Make sure you believe your story, or no one else will. Mm-hmm. And she channeled that. Mm-hmm. 4 years old, talking to her baby dolls,
which is awesome. I mean, I can remember my oldest son. My dad said to him once, Buddy, why do you ask so many questions? And he looked right at my dad and he said, Poppy, that's how I learn.
Isn't that cute?
Yeah.
That is how we learn. And that's why we've talked about this in prior podcasts too, about the stories. Having the stories, and people don't make the time now. Like our grandparents and great grandparents would sit down and tell us the stories. Mm-hmm. So when you're speaking this language and you're hanging out with other people that speak the language, you're talking about stories. And there's depth to that. There's depth, there's meaning. It could be sadness, but it still feels rich. Mm-hmm. No matter what a person's speaking about, because when somebody's sharing their life, it's a beautiful thing because you're connecting with someone else. And I know for you and for me, all we ever really wanted was connection. But you first have to be connected to yourself. So right. When you learn through this work that it's God, you, and then everybody else, then it starts working properly, because your gift it is a gift to be intuitive, but it can also be a curse until you learn how to work with it. So when you learn that it's God, you, and then everybody else, God's love flows through you. and you don't feel alone because God's working through you, and the love that you're channeling is so pure and so unconditional that everyone, everyone, and I've never seen it any other way, people aren't threatened by it. Mm-hmm. It doesn't mean that they're going to embrace it, but they're not threatened by it. Mm-hmm. And when you walk away, you don't feel insulted. You don't feel imbalanced because you're in your centered self, and your centered self only observes. It does not. It does not. It's not attached to anything. It's not judging. It's not attached. It's just completely detached, and it's just pure love.
Right. And the only thing that's coming through you is God's love.
Yeah.
And it feels right, and it just a lot of times you're right in the moment, and
so that brings back this limbo space. So when we're in this limbo space and God's preparing us for the next step of our life because we're working so hard, just what you just said. What did you just say? See, we lost it.
See, I channeled it.
I know you did. That's what happens when you channel. Oh, you're with God. So when you're in that limbo space, rather than being uncomfortable because you're just sitting there, when you think about your grandfather, my great grandmother, we talked about this, they sat there for lots of times and just listened. They were listening, you know? So instead of getting nervous and thinking there's things I should be doing right now, my to-do list, or lots of times our mind will take us in the past, and life is happening in the future. And in the past, lots of times there's regrets, there's, you know, there's anger, resentments and stuff. So, or if the future, you're worried about the unknown. But if you really allow yourself to be in this place of limbo and be with God, be in heart and mind a team in your internal home, and be in the quiet and be in the moment. It's an actual space. And just allow. You'll be with God, and you'll start to listen, and you'll start to hear, and you'll feel led, and you'll feel safe, and you'll feel loved unconditionally. And when you have that, you don't need it from anybody else because you already have it. And human beings are well and good, but nobody loves like that. Human beings don't love unconditionally the way God loves us. And in that kind of love, there's nothing but opportunity and growth, forgiveness, peace, and it can be trusted. And it's really magical. It's magical. That's where the energy work is like magic. And I watch it over and over again in my own life and in other people's lives. I've watched it you in your life and how you've transformed your life. And I just love working with others.
And it is magical. It is.
Yeah. So we've decided that we've been doing the podcast every week. And for now, we're going to start doing it every other week because there's some other commitments we have. We're working on the book. And we would still love to hear from you if you have any comments. And I will be posting on my website, Intuitive Energy Healing with Petra. I'm going to be posting a tab where I will be offering a session, a group session for anybody that wants to join in. It will be free, and you'll get a taste of what it's like to be with others and what the group sessions are like. Missy will be there, and because people ask and they don't know, so this is not something that you can really explain. It's something that you need to experience, and it would be my gift to you. And I would love to meet anybody who would like to give it a try.
And I encourage anybody out there who really this resonates with, because it really is, like Petra said, you really need to experience it. And once you experience it, it can be a very good place to be in. And I highly recommend it.
So thank you for listening today, and we'll see you in 2 weeks.
Take care.
Bye-bye.